Good morning, all. I'm going to do a very abbreviated welcome this morning because we have lots to accomplish in this wonderful program that I'm so excited about. So without further ado, if I could have someone who would volunteer to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
You'll join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ron. When you walked in, you were given a copy of the minutes from our last meeting. I'm also abbreviating this. I hope you've had a chance to look at them. If there are no corrections, I will take a motion that they be accepted as listed.
So moved.
Okay, we have Tom French and Carol. I'm just going to list you as a second since you tied on that. All right, and with that, and speaking of which, I am going to ask Carol Dyer, who works on our sustainability committee. We're doing a short recognition today of our corporate members. And I'm not going to say anything else, but she is. Just watch the cord.
Thank you, and thank everyone for being here today. And my job today is just a wonderful one. I get to say very special appreciation to our Garland County Historical Society corporate members. And the first year we've done this is in 2021. And we are very proud to be able to present some recognition pieces today to those corporate members. Tom French is on our committee, and he is going to help me distribute these. And so first, we are going to mention Quapaw Bath and Spas as an Augustus H. Garland corporate member. And so in addition to receiving a plaque, they are also going to receive copies of the 2021 record. And so the copies of the record are in the back of the room. The plaques are here, and I'm hoping, is there anyone here from the Quapaw Bath and Spas? Please come forward. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. So very much. Can we take a picture? Oh, yes, we can. Thank you. Thank you. And you have 20 copies of these. They're waiting for you at the back of the room. There we go. All kinds of stuff.
And I have a dolly if you want.
They're $20 a piece.
Thank you. And also, our next our next member rather, is Natural Park Gifts and Souvenirs, a Sam Fordyce corporate member. They're not able to be here today, but they will also receive a lovely plaque, and they will receive, I think, 10 copies of our record. Next we have Myers Realty, a Hiram Whittington corporate member. And we are so honored today. We have two beautiful Myers women who are here today. We have Jan and Cindy.
Oh, that's it, receive the plaque.
Yeah, see the plaque, and you have got copies of the record back.
Okay, good, thank you.
We're gonna have a picture. Let's come over here. We'll get a picture.
I want to know.
With a handsome man.
Your hair on.
Oh,
We get to hear them today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
very
Thank you,
much.
Sandy.
Thank you, Carol, for everything. Oh, that's the wrong one? Here we go.
Thank you.
There we go. And our next recognition is for AT&T, who is also a Hiram Whittington corporate member. Do we have anyone from AT&T today?
I use AT&T.
They were at my house this morning.
I will say before I sit down that it is truly with great joy that we celebrate our corporate members. Their commitment reflects the strength and the determination of many generations of Hot Springians and folks who live in Garland County. It also ensures that we're able to continue to gather and preserve and treasure the rich history of Hot Springs and Garland County. So we thank them so very much.
Well, and Tom hasn't scolded me yet, but I'm supposed to remind you that we receive no funding other than the money that we raise through memberships, including individual and corporate grants, the publications we sell. So we really appreciate our corporate members more than you would ever know. Okay, one last little bit of business. This is also the meeting where we announce our slate of officers for the next year. Once I have announced the slate, we will also accept nominations from the floor, should there be any. The first person I would like to introduce, if she hasn't run off, is Betty Martin. She has served as vice president for 2 years, and in January will take over as president. Our nomination for vice president, I don't believe is here today, Lynn Pitcock. He's on the road, but he has been nominated to be our vice president. He will serve 2 years and then go into the president's role. Elaine Johnston. Elaine, would you stand up, please, as secretary? Ray Rossett as treasurer. I don't believe Ray's here today. John Hoffel as a regular board meeting member. I'm trying to go too fast. So Ron Fuller. And Kyle Clem. Is Kyle here today? There he is, Kyle. And finally, the one I always forget for some reason, Tom French, who would be a continuing board member. Now I will open the floor. You're not off this year, though. Okay. With that, I will open the floor for nominations, if there are any. All right, well, hearing none, then we will formally vote on this slate next month at the November meeting. Again, serving as a board member does not come with a big check. So I really would like to express my appreciation to the people. This is not an honorary board, it's a working board, as you can see with different people doing things today. So it takes a lot of time, and we really appreciate it. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Liz to introduce the program, which is why you came, not to listen to me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. I want to invite you briefly to our Tuesday, November 15th meeting and program. It's called Radio Station KTHS, the Arlington Years. It's going to be given by Hollis Duncan, who is the expert on this subject. He is a wonderful speaker, and I know you will really enjoy his program. Now, speaking of wonderful speakers, our speaker today is Dr. Robert Bob Bailey, who's had an interest in science, especially animals, since he was a small child. And I have it on good authority that his mother had to contend with live rattlesnakes in the refrigerator and rocket fuel in the kitchen. Bob went on to become a physicist, biologist, and chemist with degrees from UCLA, UC Berkeley, and the University of Central Arkansas, and of course a businessman as well. As a young man, he served in the U.S. Army, was a biochemist with UCLA Neuropsychiatric Institute, a biologist with California Fish and Game, and then the director of training of the U.S. Navy Marine Mammal Program. Now that ought to be enough for one for anybody, but
I've never trained a dolphin before in my life.
luckily for us, he came to Hot Springs in 1965 to work with the Animal Behavior Enterprises. He was the director of research, then vice president, and then CEO and COO. And over the years, he's trained over 120 variety of animals and taught thousands of people how to use his techniques. He's taught and lectured worldwide, and we are so happy that he is here today to tell his fascinating story.
Thanks, Liz. It really isn't my story. It is the story of more of the Brelands and locales, including Hot Springs. And you'll know more about that in a little bit. But you can see my title up here. Hot Springs was the center of modern animal training in the world. We traveled around the world. We had shows all over the world. We taught people from all over the world. So let me start here, and let me see if all of this still works. By Jove. Let me thank Liz and the Garland County Historical Society for having me here, plus the library for all of the nice equipment and Paul helping me set up here. And thanks, of course, for all of you for attending. I'm going to try to get through this. I don't know if I'm going to do it with, I'm going to have to do it fast, let's say. And
Time.
this is the
For untold
technology.
generations, the craft was built on intuition and accumulated experience,
I
and
trained
passed from master to apprentice. What was substance? What was superstition? Behavioral science in the last half century has given us many of the answers. In 1938, B.F. Skinner was a young psychology professor at the University of Minnesota. Skinner had discovered he could predict and change behavior. In the laboratory, pigeons learned that pecking a key gave it food. The frequency of key pecking increased. Other behaviors declined. When Skinner changed the rules of the game and stopped feeding the pigeons for pecking the key pecks gradually disappeared. Skinner's rigorous scientific methods proved that the animal changed its behavior to improve its circumstances. A simple idea? Yes, but fundamental to his view of animal behavior. His book, Behavior of Organisms, marked the birth of what is now known as operant conditioning.
what is amazing is how fast Skinner was able to apply this in the real world. We, of course, entered World War II in December of 41. But by April, he already had put together a project, sold it to the military, and they began work on what was called pigeon in a pelican. And this describes the project.
Grain elevator. Skinner and his students trained pigeons and built equipment. By late 1942, Skinner had designed and built his first pelican guidance system. 3 pigeons worked together to guide the projectile.
That's a bomb.
The bomb simulator provided the target and the guidance devices operated by the pigeon. During training, the pigeons were harnessed inside the simulator. An image of
Pigeons
the
in a
military
sock.
target was displayed in front of the pigeon. The bird was trained to recognize a certain feature of the target and to peck at that feature. The mechanism translated the pigeon's pecks into guidance signals to the bomb's agents.
Even though it tested well,
This
the
on
U.S.
History
High
Channel.
Command simply could not bring themselves to trust their bombs to bird brains. Luckily for the pigeons, they pulled the plug. The super psychologist was ultimately stymied by a simple lack of trust.
It actually worked very well. Keller and Marie Breland, they were married by this time. They really believed in the technology. It was amazing to them how fast the training went. So they bought a farm and they began to train animals. Now, how many of you have heard of clicker training? Many of you have. Most people think it's new. Well, the Brelands were training with clickers way back in 1943, routinely. But they had to make their own. This is a clicker right here. They had to make them because they were used in the war effort. The 101st Airborne and others were using them for communication devices. So they had to make their own. So by 1946, they made a proposal to General Mills, the cereal company, and General Mills accepted the proposal. And so the Brelands began a program with General Mills.
Keller and Marie decided to use trained chickens to advertise farm feeds. General Mills was their first client. In 1947, Keller took their chicken show on the road. Their company, now called Animal Behavior Enterprises, or ABE, was an instant success. General Mills wanted more shows. The Brelands trained dozens of salesmen and hundreds of chickens. The salesmen learned behavioral principles, including discrimination, reinforcement schedules, and shaping. Thousands of animal shows were given nationwide. It was a busy time for Keller and Marie. They trained chickens and feed salesmen. They wrote instruction manuals, and they built all of the show equipment and shipping containers. The Brelands used the new behavioral technology to promote General Mills. Animals were trained for advertising, promotions, trade shows, and special events.
So in 1947, you can see where they were operating in this area. By 1950, they were border to border and coast to coast. And they had trained thousands of animals and dozens of people to take these shows all over the United States. That's because it was the technology. Talk more about that later on. But then during this nationwide expansion, Keller visited Hot Springs, and Keller wanted to move to Hot Springs.
Pains. The training farm was too small for the Breland menagerie. Keller was from West
He's
Mississippi.
miserable in the
He did
snow.
not care much for the cold of Minnesota. It was time to move south. In 1950,
He's
Keller
on
and Marie
Ridgeway
packed their
Boulevard.
bags, their 2 children and their animals, and moved to Hot Springs, Arkansas. On a 270-acre dairy farm, Marion and Keller continued to expand their business. Lara was ABE's biggest customer. However, ABE animals perform for other customers,
Knott's Berry
our
Farm.
corporate clients, and fairs, parks, and tourist attractions. They had entered the amusement business.
This is some of the staff there at ABE in 51. This is Grant Evans. He had moved from Chicago. He was a cameraman. He was in World War II as a cameraman. To me, he was a free-floating genius. He could read a technical manual, close the book, and do it. It was amazing. This is a little shot. We had picnics and all sorts of farm gatherings. It was kind of a fun company. And you can see the company's growing. The big thing is the growth of the company. By the time we reached our maximum size, we were roughly 50 full-time employees and 50 part-time. So I'm signing checks for 100 people. So, and by the way, we were the largest producer of trained animals in the world. And people in Hot Springs had no idea we were here. So by 1950s, we were producing trained animals. This was the first commercial enterprises of Skinner's work. The important thing is it was a technology, so it could be taught. We could teach people how to do this. Brelands called it overtraining. It's now called fluency. And by 1986, we kept some track of the numbers of animals, well over 15,000 and over 140 different species. This is the little brochure of some of the animal acts that we shipped around. And these are some more promotional shots of what we were doing at the time. The animals were so well trained, the plan was so simple that we could send the animals out with an instruction booklet and people could make it work. And I'm talking about over 400 of these units were across the country, and we are now international also. Now, where were we? Well, we were shipping out on Broadway. There used to be a depot where the commercial activity took place on the Missouri Pacific Railroad. So we would haul animals. At any one time, we might have 100 to 300 animals waiting for a train at Mopac. They're on Broadway, right there on Broadway. And then, of course, Arkansas Best, AMF, they were the shippers of large crates that we would send across the country. But we had our own system also. We had shows that we transported around the country. We had 6 of these big mobile units, and we could rent large trailers. We had shows like it's called Pixie Press. It actually produced a newspaper. The animals produced the newspaper. So that was in the 50s and 60s. We had them around the country. We got into television advertising. And this is a little blurb on television, movies.
Important to ABE. Television advertising loomed as a major market for the future. Keller and Grant produced many test commercials. One test commercial was ACE, with their motto, "Ace is best." Their experimentation paid off in 1954 when they produced their first major TV commercial in Los Angeles.
If it's safety you want most,
The longest running television commercial ever,
Coast Federal Savings.
over 20 years.
Federal pays you more now.
And ABE did several promotional TV ads for tourist attractions, including this one featuring an animal-run newspaper. One of our corporate clients was Quaker Oats, makers of Puss in Boots cat food. At first, we did taste tests. Then we produced TV commercials. Early TV made special demands on animals, Incredibly bright lights and loud noises were especially unsettling. Our training programs prepared the cats for most of the eventualities of being a stage performer. Training usually took place in hot springs. We then went on location for the actual filming.
This, and by the way, this is Francis, if any of you remember Francis. Grant and Keller produced a film for teaching things, and it turned out as a foreign language film. It's still being used today. They teach colors and all sorts of other things in French, Spanish, and a few other languages. The Brelands produced a number of training manuals for dogs and cats. Anyone here trained dogs before? Yeah, a few people trained. Anyway, it was not well received by the dog trainers in the 50s and 60s. You don't feed the dog. You hit the dog if it doesn't do what you want. So it didn't go over too well. It's different now. It's all over. We were in lots of publications, well over 1,000 national and international publications. The Brelands ABE had articles, interesting articles, Reader's Digest, Wall Street Journal, Time, Life, Collier's, all of those. The Brelands really got big time international news from some of the training they did in Florida.
Our jungle hired ABE to train a new style theatrical bird show and to teach their people how to train. The new show revolutionized bird training nationwide. ABE acts such as roller skating and bicycle pedaling have become standard macaw show fare. We demonstrated how fast macaws can be trained to perform complex behaviors. In less than 5 months, ABE trainers produced 12 complete bird shows, about 60 birds, performing a total of more than 700 individual behaviors. We trained many other birds, including toucans, mynas, parrots, shelducks, and black swans. Many beautiful birds were slow learners. Swans and peafowl proved behaviorally limited. Some might even call them stupid. However, that is not precise terminology. Mammals such as squirrels, mules, and horses were favorite stage characters. In the 1950s and 60s, America was dotted with small amusement parks. Animal shows were too expensive and complicated for these small parks. ABE produced the first low-cost packaged animal shows. The idea caught on, and dozens of new animal shows appeared around the country. The new shows and the IQ Zoo attracted national media attention.
Time magazine ran a story on
It's married.
IQ Zoo. And because of the Time magazine story, we got into the dolphin business.
In 1955, Marine Studios in Florida had the only commercially trained dolphin in the United States. In rapid succession, the trainer quit and the only trained dolphin died. Sparked by the Time article, Marine Studios contacted the Brelands. Keller, who had never seen a dolphin before in his life, went to Florida. In 6 weeks, Marine Studios had another dolphin show, this time with 2 dolphins.
This is the manual that the Brelands wrote at the time. I say here, it's supposed to have stayed at Marine Studios, but other people pilfered it and sold it to other ocean area at the time. So it got to be broadcast. Remember the zoo parade, Marlin Perkins and that? Well, he was frequent visitors to Hot Springs. We had lots of visitors with different shows across the country. Johnny Carson, Donahue, Oprah, we've been on all of those shows. This was probably the most serious work that the Brelands, and I was involved myself, and it had to do with what was called retardation in those days. They were the first to write manuals for teaching the ward attendants so that they could teach the clients at the various institutions.
A pre-behavioral retarded ward was to visit Bedlam. Care was custodial at best. Attendants were ill-prepared to cope with the problems of managing their nonverbal charges. There was no attempt to train even the simplest of self-care behaviors, such as eating and going to the toilet. In 1963, the Brelands designed and implemented the first behavioral program for the retarded in the southern region. Over the next 2 years, the program was expanded and many ward attendants were trained in the techniques of shaping behavior. A manual was written and published. Today, operant conditioning is virtually the only technology used in teaching the mentally retarded and autistic.
I'm afraid there was a lot of professional jealousy going on at the time. And the psychologists that were working there with the developmentally disabled said the Brelands could no longer work with those clients because they were animal trainers. They should not be allowed to train people. Well, that didn't last long because the parents and other organizations said no. They were the most successful of working with the developmentally disabled. So Marion achieved a Lifetime Achievement Award for her work. The Brelands believed in science. That's why they were so fast at what they were doing.
We call garbage can science. This vision test is an example of garbage can science at work. This visual acuity test used a well-known laboratory procedure called match to sample. In our unconventional application, we used large visual targets placed at long distance rather than the usual very small targets placed close up. The bird looked at a board striped with bars. The board could be rotated to make the bars horizontal or vertical. The bird made its choice by pecking keys directly in front of it. If the test board stripes were vertical, the bird was to respond to the key with the vertical stripes. If the bars were horizontal, the bird was required to pick the horizontal key. As the target distance increased, the stripes appeared smaller and smaller. At some distance, depending on its visual acuity and some other factors, the bird eventually could not determine whether the bars were horizontal or vertical.
Simple but very effective. We had lots of visitors from all around the world, psychologists, biologists, and Horsley Gant was a famous psychologist. He was the last Pavlov. Anyone here know Pavlov? Heard the term? Yeah, okay, a lot of you have. He was the last Pavlov student. And then, of course, Walt Disney was here and visited a couple of times. Keller died in June of '65.
In 1965, after a prolonged illness, Keller Breland died. Keller was a scientist, a showman, and an entrepreneur. He was also a man of vision. And Keller's vision continued at ABE after his death. Marion became president, I came aboard and soon became general manager.
This was the training farm in '67. It was on Ridgeway Boulevard. And you only see part of it because we actually had 270 acres. So there were other places where there were other structures where we were doing some of our training. And I'll say right now, we did a lot of classified work. So that work was hidden elsewhere on the property. We had mobile structures for doing that training. Now, the IQ Zoo was, you might say, the front organization. That's how people knew who we were. It was used to generate revenue, and it did that. But its primary function for us was the training of people. This is a film now. The film is 27 minutes long, so I can't play the whole thing, and I'll cut it off in just a little bit. Grant Evans put this together.
If you're visiting in town, you may have a free ride to the IQ Zoo in this little bus.
That's Richard Humphreys, one of the staff members. It's all staff members, kids.
The show runs continuously, so we can drop in anytime if the doors are open. Around this room are little stages set in the walls, and believe it or not, this part of the show runs all by itself.
Welcome to the IQ Zoo. Won't you please step over here to window number 1?
Now we can also have
Here's
an
the
MC.
IQ Zoo baseball field. Our star home run hitter is waiting to step up to the bat. There in the background is our duck scorekeeper. So let's play ball. Batter up. There'll be more action very soon at window number 2. We'll be looking at the IQ Zoo dance hall. And now we proudly present our dancing darling, Little Miss Ruby.
That's my daughter Kimmy, one of the twins.
But don't go away, there's lots more. Here we'll see a real stage show with animal stars and a real live mistress of ceremonies. Here's Miss Judy, and here's Miss Judy's co-star, Professor Punch. It's payday for the professor. Soon there'll be athletic events, animal jokes, music and dancing, and games to play with the audience. It's all in fun.
My son Bob. Eddie Fisher.
Then there's a clever raccoon who puts a ball through the hoop exactly as many times as he's told. This time, let's try 3. There must be a trick to that one.
This is a parade downtown. We had these animal characters downtown that interacted with the public. And it's one of the signs that we had for the IQ Zoo. This is the IQ Zoo in Japan. We had them elsewhere. We went to sales conventions. We always went to fun places. We didn't go to any of the bad places. And this was in Houston. That's Gene Cernan, the astronaut, and he invited us afterwards to go over to the space facility there. So we spent the day playing around with rockets and all like that. It was kind of fun. But Cernan tied the chicken, so he was as smart as a chicken. Anyway, Anybody remember this?
Wonderland go, see the birds and the cockatoo show. Watch the dolphins dance and perform their pranks at Animal Wonderland. See Animal Wonderland, all the furry and feathery clan. You can pet all that's here without any fear at Animal Wonderland. See Animal Wonderland, Hot Springs' newest and largest attraction, only 2 miles from the spa on Highway 270 West.
We did that in Cletus Jones' kitchen. That was a lot. I began designing Animal Wonderland in 1970 and started construction in 72. We built it in 100 days. That's working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Those 2 trees were the centerpiece of the whole park. And you'll see how that develops over time, this marrying going through breaking the ground. Anyway, see the little red circle right there? Those are the 2 trees, and we're starting to dig out ponds, and there's a giant evaporation pond. Most expensive part of the whole thing was a place to get rid of the salt. That was required by the state. Every time we filled the tank with new water for the dolphins, it used 11 tons of salt. So you can see construction going on here. We started, that wasn't very smart. We're leveling ground, digging holes, putting in the utilities was the big thing. All of the water, electricity, we took a lot of power for all of the fountains and water circulation we had. Building the aviary, all of that took place. And here's an overall view of it in March. You can see this is 270. This is 270. And you can see the ponds that are being built, evaporation pond. Anyway, by May, it starts looking like this. The foliage starts coming out. April, you can see what it looked like. There's another show area, covered show area. It was very busy. I lost 35 pounds during the construction. This is building the dolphin bleachers. You already see the tank is there, and it's a storage area also. The show area inside the aviary, one of the performing sea lions we had. There are the 2 trees right there, and this is the entranceway to Animal Wonderland. And this was my vision back in 1970, looking through the 2 trees, so you see the park. Those trees had died, I would have been in bad shape. Anyway, we had special days. We had Bozo the clown. These are my kids, Bobby, it's Ken and Kim, and Laura, and Mary. These Richard Humphreys, and this is Lynn, and Bozo. There's Bozo. And these are just shots. We had country western bands come in every now and then. We had special events. Ever been to an egg toss? We had egg tosses. And we offered quite a big prize, and high schools came, the quarterback and ends came there on the egg toss day trying to win the prize. And they were throwing that egg a long way. Anyway, we had Miss Arkansas pageant show up, lots of special events. The dating game, they had 3 or 4 every year that came. And this was Animal Wonderland in 75. We had lots of people show up for filming things. We had the BBC, CBS, NBC, National Geographic. We had lots of people show up showing the animals. Now comes the boring part. I'm going to talk about myself because I was a part of this. You've already heard that this list of where I come from, so I could skip over a lot of this stuff. I consider myself a behavior mechanic. My background, you already know, physics, chemistry, and biology. I just made it work. That's what I was all about. I loved when things worked. Venice, California. Now, I was born in Ohio, but in Venice in 42 does not look anything like the Venice of today. There are oil wells everywhere. Now, they had the canals, but they were filled with oil. So, you know, they were selling them. It just so happens in this picture that I got from the internet that this was the Nightingale Grammar School, which is where I went to school. While I was there, we lived in a trailer park. And I won't worry about any of this sort of stuff because you really don't that. Moved to San Fernando Valley, and in the community it was a bedroom community. Roy Rogers, Andy Devine, Sons of the Pioneer, Robert Redford, Natalie Wood. It was, as I say, a bedroom community. We had snow one time while we were there. Well, we had strawberries every year, all year round, all the strawberries you wanted. This is where I became familiar with the field. I spent a lot of time in the field, and the university paid me. I was hired as a photographer and field collector. And that was the first time ever for an undergraduate. So I traveled all through Mexico and the US. I spent a lot of time in Mexico, Central, South America, on the water and on land. And this is just some video. This happened to be on a commercial boat. I went sometimes on fishing boats, sometimes on research boats. But there's a big expanse of water out there, and there's a lot of interesting things going on. This is what it looks like when a dolphin's following you or riding your bow. I'm up on the top of the bow looking down at the dolphin. These are some islands and some rough coasts off Mexico, Central, South America. It's an elephant seal. There are lots of places along the coast where they be elephant seals. And those little elephant seals, the females and young ones out there, are food for killer whales. And there were lots of killer whales down there. So I got a lot of chance to interact with a lot of killer whales. Again, more of a country. I'll move on. Now we get to where the Brelands and myself get together.
Marine mammals that brought us all together. I was a zoologist from UCLA with a background in physics and chemistry. I was also the Navy's director of training, though I'd never trained a dolphin before in my life. The Navy Marine Mammal Facility was at Point Mugu, California, just north of Los Angeles. Our resources included a large lagoon with access to the sea. We had facilities, but none of us knew what we were doing. We were inexperienced in operant conditioning or any other training methodology. Keller and Marie were hired to teach us operant methods. Keller's training classes at Point Mugu used chickens as training models. Our first research program studied dolphin sound production and communication. We trained our dolphins to cooperate in veterinary procedures. This dolphin was trained for EKGs and other medical tests. But dolphins at sea were what the Navy needed. In 1963, we traveled to Marine Life Oceanarium in Gulfport, Mississippi, to collect the dolphins needed for my first open ocean program. With the help of Sam Ridgway, our Navy veterinarian, we transported the dolphins by air from Mississippi to Arkansas. I studied dolphin nutrition and their sonar. Data were gathered much as in a standard Skinner box experiment, complete with cumulative recorders.
This is at the Ridgeway Farm. The Brelands built a facility for the Dolphins there. And I came aboard actually reported for work in August of '65. I had to go to Myers Realty in order for them to sell me my first home. So, and this is the way my kids grew up. These are the 3 sets of twins. They've all got an animal of one kind or another. They were raising gulls and vultures, and this is Ken and Kim with the lion cub. Yeah, they went sleeping with lion cubs and bears and all sorts of things. Marion and I were married in 1976. As I say, you're bringing together more kids than the Brady Bunch. For those of you who remember the Brelands, this is Frances, and of course she's no longer with us. And then in my family, it's Laura and Ken. They're no longer with us. I continue the Brelands idea of training simplicity and precision. That's what I bring to the table. 3 steps of getting behavior: think, plan, and do. It's that simple. Don't complicate it. Now, getting into some specific programs. This was for the C.I.A. This is cat guidance. We began the work in '66, and this is work about 1966, '67.
ABE tested many types of guidance systems. This cat is making abrupt changes in his path of travel. These changes are not accidental. A trainer is guiding this cat using high-frequency sound. Cats can be guided in any direction, even up trees or telephone poles. Or the cat could be told to sit or lie quietly for long periods of time. The humans shown here are used as feeding stations during this early stage of training.
The cat was implanted with a cochlear implant and a radio transmitter. Whatever the cat could hear, you could hear a mile away. And yes, they were used, and yes, they were very effective. This is one of the early places we took the cats after training at the farm is downtown. This is right on Central, right on Promenade. We would be across the street in one of the abandoned buildings up on the 2nd or 3rd floor, and we'd be aiming across the street, guiding the cat up and down, following people, or having the cat sit or lie down. It was, it was just a routine occurrence. Nobody ever knew it was happening. And we did a lot of free flight guidance work with alien species.
System for the Army. Pigeons were trained to fly out ahead of the truck convoy and search for hostiles. Detection training began on the farm property. The pigeons carried a small transmitter. This transmitter was actuated by a wind-operated switch. As long as the pigeon flew, there was a signal. When the bird landed or flew beyond the range of the receiver, the signal was lost. Transmitter reliability and the range of transmission was poor. This is what a typical short-range flight looked and sounded like. The pigeons learned to discriminate between people on the road and those off the road, concealed in an ambush posture. They learned to detect very small exposed parts of people and to locate concealed weapons or objects appearing metallic. In this test, I was completely concealed except for the lens of my camera. The real target was a few meters away. However, the pigeon detected me first before he went to the intended target. The camera was shaking due to my uncontrollable laughter. In a few trials, the birds learned that people in trees were hot targets. Recovery of the bird was usually to a moving truck. The system was tested at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, A military truck was converted to carry the pigeons and equipment. In 2 weeks, we adapted the birds to work in the new environment and trained troops to use the system. The squad, as the troops called themselves, were very effective in detecting and suppressing ambushes.
This is a sample mission, just one of many different types of missions for the ravens. Now, we also worked with pigeons, but the ravens were much better at it.
First, to take a good photo, the raven had to hold its head at a proper angle and push gently against the designated surface. Shutter speeds were slow and pictures were easily blurred. Bridge timing was especially critical on this project. These demonstration trials are much shorter than the usual flights. This is a typical photograph taken at twilight.
So happens there was a building in Malvern that looked almost exactly like one of the targets in a European operation. And so I'm showing this picture. The distance that we usually flew the birds was from 200 to 800 meters, about a half mile. And it was always at night, by the way. These birds were flying at night, and it took roughly 1 year to change the bird from being a daytime flyer to a nighttime flyer. Now, if anyone's really interested in avian work, this was actually published 2 years ago by the C.I.A. They got a Freedom of Information demand, and so they published this. I wrote this in '72, and it's out there. If you look up Operator's Manual, Avian Delivery System C.I.A., you'll get this. And, it's pretty boring reading. Anyway, this was golf training for the government. We did it for a number of different organizations, including the Navy. We began in about 1966, 67, and went through much of the 70s.
Greeting causes this herring gull to give a stereotypic greeting to the trainer.
Gull saying hi.
Clickers were used in many stages of gull training. We gradually increased the complexity of the animal's operating environment, from tabletops to enclosed boxes, from small fly pens to large fly pens, from indoors to outdoors. Each step was carefully planned, and no step was taken until the bird was ready. In this scenario, the bird searched for and recovered a red ring. The ring was a simple way to tell the trainer that the bird had found the target. We have only shown trials at short ranges. Many of our flights exceeded several miles. There was always a risk of losing a bird, especially during foul weather or at night.
We could operate out to
In
about
seagull training, as in all good animal training, stimulus control is the name.
flights would be about an hour to an hour and a half.
These gulls were trained for the U.S. Navy in about 2 years. The birds were then transported to San Diego, where Navy trainers were instructed in the care and operation of the birds and the equipment.
Is that San Diego?
It then became the Navy's task to continue the application of stimulus control.
We went all over the place studying different species. This was at Midway Island. We were studying albatross. This is the dolphin facility at Key West. I was the manager of the facility there in Key West. Okay, we closed Animal Wonderland in '81, closed ABE's commercial operation in 1990, 91. We said 47 years was long enough. And Marion continued to teach at Henderson, where she had been training or teaching for many years. And I began doing some research work. We began doing chicken workshops. folks. Did it at the Bell Rose. I did not do this video. Someone else did. And this, as I said, is the Bell Rose. And this shows what a classroom looked like. But we had a lot of fun doing other things. On the Bell, often toured hot springs, different parts, places in hot springs. Of course, Marion died in 2001. This was drawn by Lisa Mantle, a beautiful picture. The students gathered together and put in a bench for Marion and myself at Hollywood Park, which you can visit and go picnic. Most of the ABE material now is in the Smithsonian. It's spread between Washington, D.C. and a place in Akron, Ohio called the Museum of Psychology. Now, I continued, Marion wanted me to continue, so I continued teaching the white ladies, as we call them. The Parveen Farhudi and myself, we trained in the United States and in various places in Europe. The bird now has to wait to do the next step until it's signaled. There's the signal. We try to have fun doing these things. That's Skinner. Now has to wait. Here's the signal. Okay, I've lectured, I just listed someplace, Harvard, MIT, Smithsonian, Stock places. This was in Sao Paulo and then the Caribbean and Mexico, other places. I've trained with the military and police, of course. This was North Sea operations with dogs. North Sea is a rough place to work. Here, we're remotely guiding multiple dogs at miles distance. They're miles away, and we're using different modes of communication. These guys have their computers here, and they're telling the dog where to go. I've worked with NATO troops different places, and this is a simple system. That's a monocle. He's seeing what you're seeing here. The dog has a television camera on it. And usually there's lots of cars out there and you watch the whole search, but this is just a demonstration. You can hear the dog, and it's important to hear the dog because you know it's sniffing when you hear the dog. You gotta hear the dog sniff. You don't want to reinforce the dog if it's not sniffing. Now, if it wants to, come on out here, fellas, I found it. Okay, that's good. And, okay, I've been on giving cruises, programs on cruises. And maybe some of you remember the conference we had here in Hot Springs. This was in 2019, and we had people from all over the world attend. It was really a packed house. And this is the Bailey entourage. My kids are there. And this is where it was my swan song. I told people, I'm not doing this anymore. So it's just about publishing. So thanks a lot. I appreciate your attention. If any questions, I'm available.
Have any of the children gone on to do similar?
Not really as a fun thing. I have a daughter that is involved in smell detection work, this nose work, as they call it. But she's also the director of a cardiac laboratory. Kimmy is involved in falconry from time to time, but that's about it. Now, I did not promote their getting into this because they would have to go somewhere else. It's a tough business, small town. We didn't do business here except for the IQ Zoo. Our business was elsewhere. Okay. Yes. Okay, go ahead.
So based on everything you showed us, it looks like most of your research is based on positive reinforcement. Is that the way to go based on your research?
Yes, but remember, you've got 4 quadrants. You've got the punishment side, and you've got the reinforcement. It should be a matter of reinforcement. But if the animal does something bad, really bad, that can hurt it or someone, then you've got to be prepared to stop the behavior.
Okay, so this
Now,
is medium.
You've got to be prepared. I have used punishment in our programs probably 6, 8, 10 times at the most in a part of the program, because there are times where the animal can get hurt in some of the operations that we're doing. Now, in pet dog training, I don't see beating on the dog. I mean, just no particular reason to. You shouldn't be putting the dog in that kind of a situation where you have to do that. So it should be positive reinforcement, yes. Or ignoring what's going on and get another behavior. But if you have 3 times where that dog does something you don't want it to do, then you need to go to that wall and bang your head hard 3 times because you set it up. You screwed up. You've got to take responsibility for your training. So,
Other than dogs, is the military still doing anything with dolphins, or is all that kind of
oh
gone
yes,
by?
there's quite
Still going on.
Still a dolphin program going on, very much out there. Yeah, they're located around the world. They're usually attached to SEAL units. So. Anything else?
Truth and myth. Did y'all train Flipper?
No, but I was there by accident, totally by accident. A friend of ours was actually training. The dolphin belonged to Milt Zantini. And the work was done at a place called Grassy Key. If anybody knows the Keys, there's a place called Grassy Key. Now it's the Dolphin Research Center is now where Milt Zantini used to be. But Milt Zantini was shot twice by his wife, but survived. And they were back together again. Yeah, that family was really interesting. I spent a week there. The filming was done by a guy by the name of Rico Browning. And anyone ever see the movie Creature from the Black Lagoon? That's Rico Browning. He was the creature and he was in charge of the photography. But he also filmed Flipper. So it was, oh, and the dolphin's name was Mitzi.
Carrier pigeons for World War II and beyond.
Yeah, they used pigeons in World War II, mostly in World War I and before. But carrier pigeons were used. Yeah, yeah, and they had counters to the carrier pigeons. The bad guys had falcons trained to go after the pigeons. So they had countermeasures. Yes.
Just a word of appreciation to you, Dr. Bob, having studied under Dr. Marion Bailey and vicariously under you, everything that you have taught, we students works, and we continue to apply that. So thank you very much for your work.
The Brelands started it. I'm Johnny come not very late. Okay.
Are there any mammals aside from monkeys that are like as smart and trainable as dogs?
Well, there's a lot of trainable
Like in
animals.
terms of pets, I mean.
Big pardon?
In terms of pets, I mean.
Gee, it's hard to beat a dog, and you get big dogs and little dogs and the like. But it's really hard to beat a dog or just a companion that you can take anywhere, do anything with, because there's so many other things about other animals that other people don't like. But most people accept a dog. Yeah.
When I worked at the IQ Zoo in 71, I heard that, or was told that the raccoons are the smartest as far as training them and such. That's what they.
Well, I wouldn't say the smartest. It's really hard to beat chimpanzee for really being smart. They're right up there. The raccoons are smart. They're omnivores. They solve problems. But ravens are brilliant. Ravens are brilliant at solving problems. That's what we're always looking for, is animals that can solve problems. Ravens are great. As far as I'm concerned, they're the geniuses of the bird world. We thought first that the citizens, the parrots, were the really bright ones. But ravens have it all over the coordinates. Yeah. Yes. Oh, I forgot to mention. I've got a video patient like the chipmunks. Anybody ever heard of it? Okay, they're $30 each, and they're about the company. And this is a republishing of the Brelands' original 1965-66 book. So we've got those for sale.
Well, I will again be brief. Thank you so much. That was a fantastic program. I will say thank you to a few students I see out there from National Park College. Dr. Christian, I think those are yours. And we appreciate you bringing them and hope you will be stimulated to be interested in history as well. And hope you found the program interesting. And finally, Paul, thank you so much, the library, for hosting us. It's really enriched our program by having them as a partner. And I'm sure if you have any other questions, we'll be around for a few minutes. So thank you. Bye.